Hello and welcome to the final video in this little series. I'm Savalian, a software dev / creative, and this is the final installment in a series where I look at games I've played. These are all games I played within the past year or two, and I think about the UI. I look at it, I think about how they've done it, and I try to figure out what can I learn from this UI that I can use in my game or specifically not use if it's something I don't like. So all three of these videos include games that I do like and don't like the UI of, but they're all games that I've enjoyed playing. So there's an important distinction there, especially in today's video. I love these games. Having a UI that is confusing or hard to use doesn't necessarily stop people from playing your game, but if it did have a better UI, it would only improve the experience that players are having when they play it. So I think it's important to look at some of the failings, some of the things that are frustrating for people, so I cannot do that. And the three games in this video, the first one's kind of, don't worry about the first one too much, it's going to be really brief. The second two are both games that I love a lot, and I would consider them among my favorite games I've ever played, but one of them has a bad UI, and one of them has a really good UI. And remember, this is all my opinion. I'm not an expert. I would like you to learn the process I'm using, to learn how to analyze things for yourself, not necessarily listen to my analysis as it is fact, because it's not. I'm really excited about this one, so let's get into it. And now for one of my favorite games of all time. This is one of my most played games on Steam. I love it. I come back to it frequently. It's Prison Architect. Sorry to Introversion, who initially developed this game. It's a great game, and I love it to pieces, but the UI is ugly and bad, and I'm gonna explain why. So, just getting right into it. The font that is used throughout almost the entire game is this kind of like squishy hand-drawn font. It just feels a little bit sloppy to look at, and it makes sense on some of the menus, which are displayed as pieces of paper or notebooks, where maybe you would want a more hand-drawn style of font, but it doesn't make sense in a lot of other places, like tooltips, the research menu. There's some text on the ground, which probably shouldn't even be there. So like when you make a foundation, it draws text on the foundation that says requires entrance, warning you that you do need a door on the foundation to finish building it. You could accomplish this with not text. You could accomplish it with an icon or an outline of color or something to tell the player that something's missing here. And this font that they've decided to use is used everywhere, like I said, without much variation in the style. So they don't really use bold text or italicized text or anything like that to differentiate. And the size of the font is usually not based on a hierarchy. It's just used whatever size will fit in the UI where it is. And this creates spaces on the UI where this text is so small that you can't really read it. And in other places, it's so big that it just looks kind of funny because it's not really being used like a header. It doesn't look like a header font. And I think the bigger problem here is that they used text for almost everything in the UI. They used text to convey almost any piece of information, even when they could have used an icon or an indicator on screen, something on the HUD. And this is a problem because they aren't using all the tools they have available to them. They're using just one tool, like using a hammer when it's not just nails that you have to hammer in, like using a hammer to like bash a screw into a piece of wood. It's not great, and it can damage the final product, I think. And I know Prison Architect was in early access for a long time. The team was very small, and I don't want to say that you shouldn't like publish a game if the UI isn't good, but I do think it is important to recognize this, to see this way did not work quite as well. Maybe we could do it a different way. And I love this game. I love it, but I do need to be real about what it is. The next piece is gonna sound really harsh, but there's a lot of places in this game that look like they were given placeholder UI during development that was just never replaced with a polished UI. Some examples are when you hover over a prisoner, you can see their needs, and the needs section is denoted by equal signs with the word needs between them, like that's the header, instead of using font style to indicate this is a header. They just added some, it's kind of like ASCII art that they're using. The same thing with the needs themselves are indicated just by a number of plus signs next to the prisoner needs, and it's not always clear because they are plus signs. We think plus is good. It's not clear that when there are more plus signs, that means the need is getting very desperate. Like they need to address that need. It's not a good thing, like you might guess, because of the plus signs. Similarly, the prison food supply is shown in the middle of the big notebook paper side menu, which I also think it just doesn't look very good. They just drop everything in this menu. But the prisoner food supply is shown with just these tally marks that get really hard to see as you get more prisoners. It's hard to tell exactly how many you still need to feed and how much food you have relative. It can be really hard to understand what you're looking at because it's not a bar that fills up, it's not numbers, it's this section of tally marks that don't quite line up with each other. And it looks like they've just added more text to this menu that is purely informative, and it's not always relevant to what you're doing. So like they've added this, you can hold this many more prisoners for each different type of prisoner. This takes up a lot of space, and I don't see it being that useful because you can find that information in the menu at the top of the screen. The build menus in Prison Architect have always been hard to read and find what you're looking for because they don't have any sort of filtering. They did eventually add a text search that is basically the only way you can find anything, but you do need to know what the thing you're looking for is called, which is not always something you have on hand. And the most confusing part is, and I don't understand why this is still in the game after all this time, at the bottom of the objects menu there's a plus button. By default, a lot of objects that you can build are hidden, and you have to click this plus button to see them. The problem is there are useful things in this hidden menu, and it's like if you are a brand new player, you wouldn't expect things to be hidden by default. You would expect that you would need to hide things if you wanted them to be hidden. So a lot of people are confused when they can't find an object they're looking for. Luckily now if they search and they search the right text, it will show up, but it's just weird. Why is that plus button here? What's it for? There's like 8,000 things in the object menu, even when the plus button is toggled off. Anyway, that's maybe my main complaint about the Prison Architect UI is how hard it is to find objects that you want to build, because it is a building game. This is possibly the most important feature, and I don't think they thought critically about how to make this usable for people and how to make this experience like seamless for new players specifically. In a strangely opposite complaint to my previous complaint about how there was too much text, some menus are so visual that they are actually not useful. So like the staff and prisoner menus are built by showing pictures of each of the individual staff and prisoners. I don't really know what this screen is for. I never use it for anything. There's no useful information here because all you can do is see what the prisoner looks like and what their name is. I'm unsure what the purpose was envisioned for these sets of screens. I think it would work a lot better as a table with some relevant information. For example, if you want to see all of your staff and their energy levels and maybe their current activity, that seems like a useful thing to have in a menu. Or like for the prisoners, if you just have all the prisoners, their security level, their traits. Some of them have like gang traits. Some of them have like reputations where they're extra strong or stuff like that. This menu doesn't really let us do anything with the prisoners, and it also doesn't reveal any information about the prisoners that we couldn't get just by looking at the prison. So it's really important to think about the UX part of UI UX, which is user experience. It's what is the user trying to do? What do they need to know? And how is the UI giving that to them? Or how is it not in Prison Architect's case? I'm sorry. On a good note, the needs menu is hands down the most useful piece of UI in the whole game for me. This one is great. It shows all the prisoner needs, how many prisoners are struggling with that need, and how many are actively meeting that need as you're watching. So you can see if you need more showers, you can see if you need to extend the food times, if people aren't eating in the time allotted, you can see if people are getting really stressed out. It's useful, and I spend probably most of my time, out of all the menus in Prison Architect, I spend the most time looking at this one because it directly affects so many other things in the game, and it is actionable. Like, I can look at this and get information that can change the way that I play the game and help me solve problems. This one's a good one. So to conclude that horrible roast, I love Prison Architect. It's one of my favorite games. I could just keep talking about it forever, probably, because I'm so familiar with all its quirks and all the things that they've tried. And it's a great game. It's so addictive. It just makes me sad that interacting with the game is so not intuitive. It can be really hard to get new people into the game because they need to have the UI explained to them, and that's a problem. Because if people don't understand how to play, or they're frustrated because they know something is there but they can't find it, they're just not going to play it. And they're not going to tell other people to play it. I'm glad that Prison Architect did so well in spite of this, but I really think we can learn a lot about Prison Architect's UI, specifically what not to do. Sorry, Prison Architect, I love you. Moving on. We are going to end on a high note by talking about Going Under. I loved Going Under. I don't play a lot of games like the one I'm building, as weird as that is to realize. Going Under is nothing like what I'm building, but it is one of the best designed games on all aspects that I've played in a long time. And so I want to talk about it. First of all, if you don't know, Going Under is a game about corporate startups and the culture that startups perpetuate. There is a design trend in the real world that I believe is called corporate Memphis. If you just type corporate art style, it'll pop right up. There are a lot of names for it, but it's the style of using blocky, flat representations of people in wild colors, weird proportions. It's meant to sort of circumvent the need for diversity in marketing by making things a little bit outlandish. And it's intended to be like accessible, non-threatening, very friendly, to sort of cover up the fact that they are a business and they do prioritize profit over people. That's the short version, but Going Under uses that art style to expose what it is often hiding, which is, capitalism, corporate greed, stuff like that. And it does this, it's a roguelite where you venture into failed startups in the basement of the startup that you work for as an unpaid intern, and you fight the employees who have all been turned into monsters when the startup went under. The whole game is beautiful and terrible and like a metaphor from top to bottom. I could not recommend it enough. It's so well done, especially if you have worked at a startup and kind of seen this from the inside, which I have. It hit really close to home, and I really liked it. Okay, on to the UI. The UI is hilarious to me because it looks like big tech startup software. It looks like productivity software like Jira or a Trello board. All the colors are these bright, almost primary colors. The UI is flat, sort of like a material design. Things look like cards. They have rounded corners. A lot of like white with accent purple and mint green, which is like, I don't know, it just feels like everyone uses that deep purple with the mint green. There's a lot of little details that just remind me immediately of looking at productivity software. So I unfortunately don't have any footage of the quests because I didn't have any open. I've beaten this game. I don't have any quests left, but they have these little checkboxes, and then the person who gave you the quest is in a little circle, and their picture's in a little circle. And I'm like, that's like a Jira card. That's a Trello card. That's, I don't know, Monday.com or Reich, whatever. All these startup project management software, it looks just like it, and it amused me so much as I was playing it, and as I learned more about the corporate art and just the history of why corporations use this art style so much, it just got funnier and more relevant the more I learned about it after I was done playing. Also, the dialogue looks like a text conversation where you have the chat bubbles for each person, like you're texting back and forth. Another sort of techie, startup, modern kind of look that I think fits really well. And there are also apps you can pick up. They're like power-ups. And these are represented as the little round square icons, kind of like how apps look like in a smartphone. So there's a lot of ties to modern technology. This game knows exactly what it is, and just everything in the game is designed so precisely. Like there's posters on the walls of the dungeons that have corporate motivational slogans on them. Everything is just perfect. I don't know. It's a great game. It's a little bit hard if you're not very good at a dungeon crawler sort of play style, which I am not. I don't play a ton of action real-time games, but they do let you turn the difficulty down, which I did because it was the only way I could finish it. But I enjoyed this game so much, and the more I learn about the design and all the elements that are working together, it just gets more beautiful the more I learn. So, 100% would recommend this game. I think the UI is brilliant. I think it works perfectly, and when you are in the dungeon, when you're not using the UI, it's very minimal. And it lets you experience the action part of the game without getting in your way, which is another thing. There it is. I analyzed a bunch of different games with a specific look at how they implemented their user interface. I think it's important as a game developer to think about this kind of stuff, to learn from what other people are doing. I hope I wasn't too mean, especially to Prison Architect, which I've always really found the UI challenging with Prison Architect, but I love it. And just one last reminder, I am not a UI professional. I'm not a graphic designer. But I feel like everyone has the capacity to learn from the art that they are consuming. You have everything you need already to figure some of this stuff out. Just open up your brain, try to think critically about why they would do things a certain way, what effect it's having on you or other people as you're consuming it, and ultimately, what feeling or effect is that creating in you as you're playing it? Easy, right? Maybe not, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it's going to be pretty long, but that's just how I roll sometimes. But I hope it was useful or entertaining, preferably both. Don't forget to subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye bye.